Hi, this is Ken Adams, and welcome to this edition of City Beat. And joining me this week is Councilman Steve McCoid from the 4th Ward, and he's also the council president, and that means a lot more work for you, Steve. So welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
So one of the issues that is going to be on the May ballot is the police facility, and the size and the cost have been somewhat reduced. So what is your take on the new police facility ballot measure?
Well, somewhat reduced. It's been significantly reduced, about 25%. So, I think the city council heard what the voters said in November. It was basically the feedback we received was it was too expensive. And they didn't really understand the need for some folks, the call center being included in there when it was already in a earthquake approved building. And so the council did move the Willamette Valley Call Center out of there, and then cut another basically $8 million from the cost, and gave the city, if it passes, a $61.8 million budget to build a facility. We got tied up into square foot and cost per square foot and how much that would be when the original dollar amount was given. And just after discussion, the council just said, $61.8 million, build it to the size you think you need it, and add the accoutrements you think, and move forward.
Well, that was actually the cost per square foot. I remember in the previous ballot measure, that was brought up at the Salem City Club.
Yeah.
And T.J. Sullivan?
T.J. Sullivan, yeah.
Yeah, never answered the question. He talked about something else and did not address that. And I thought that was a very bad thing to do. It's because somebody's asked you directly about that.
Well, I can't answer that. I wasn't there. I will tell you that when the question was asked and we went through it, we kept getting compared to different other jails and other facilities, and Beaverton was one that was selected. And there were some differences here. Our Beaverton, well, if you compared all of Beaverton's services to the city services, we're full. So we've got a crime lab. They don't have a crime lab. We had some other programs that they didn't have. The call center was a big deal in the initial one because the call center doesn't serve just Salem. It served Marion, Polk County, Lincoln County, and a number of municipalities within those counties also, as well as the fire department here. So it's a large thing. It gets offset by those folks paying us money in, and it's in a building downtown that is earthquake proof, but they're about to capacity. And in the discussions in the next 5-6 years, they're going to be full. And one of the other issues with the call center, I'm getting off topic a little, but is the state has indicated they're going to go to regional centers. Salem will obviously is regional to some degree already. They think we'll be one of those regional centers, and if that's the case, we'll need even more space, which we figured put it in the police facility. If and when that passed, it would be in a safe place, more protected, less out there in the environment. As somebody said, it's one well-placed Ford 150 right now be taken out of operation. But that being said, probably in 8-10 years, we're going to be coming back with another bond issue to build a bigger, larger Willamette Valley Call Center facility, because we'll have outgrown the structure we're in right now that we lease.
And well, that will probably, the state, I'm sure, will then provide some funds for that, will they not?
Well, if in fact we become regional and that happens, yeah, I would think, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that came out about the police facility bond measure was that Beaverton was only asking 5% for inflation, and there was another term that they used, another 5%.
There's a contingency.
Contingency and inflation.
Yeah.
And this one, now at least when the discussion was going on in City Council, they said that it was 10% for each of those in this bond measure.
Well, I think the contingency was 9 or 9.5, and the inflation was about the same. And I pushed pretty hard in the questioning there to try to get an answer, what was the difference. And frankly, I think it's how risky do you want to be when you're running a city and floating a bond measure and doing this big building. Do you want to take the chance that it was, okay, we'll go at 5% for the inflation and something happens, delays occur, we're in a bigger inflationary period, and all of a sudden you've got a 10% inflation rate based
And you've only allowed for
and you've
5.
only allowed for 5, so you don't have enough money to finish it, so what do you end up doing? You have to go back to the voters and say, well, we sort of screwed up and we need another 5%, right. And the same would be for the contingency. And so I think it was just, you can take a risk and run it that way, or you can, be a little more conservative, put what in what was explained to me were sort of industry standards for those, for these kinds of buildings, and move forward. And if there's money left over in the bond measure itself, it says where that money would be spent. And in this case, it would have been spent if it passed, and it would still renovating the space the police department moves out of at City Hall.
It's going to need some work.
It's going to need work to get it up to date for whatever department goes in there, and any extra money would have gone towards that.
And if I'm not mistaken, Beaverton had 2 bond measures fail before they got this one passed last November.
I can't answer that.
And I think they were under some pressure to keep the costs very low.
Sure. One of the other issues in Beaverton here was it was on city land, city-owned land, and so that took another $5 or $6 million out. We are not. We're going to have to buy the property, that we want to build the police facility on. That added funds to it, and so there was a number of things when they started ticking them off. You went, oh, okay. If you take those out, we were a little more expensive, but not a lot more expensive than the Beaverton facility.
So you expect it to pass, or it's going to be close again?
I expected the first one to pass, so I'm not procrastinating. I'm not making any predictions now. I hope it passes. I think we heard the concerns about price. We heard, and this is sort of going to be a bare bones deal. We stripped it down. We pulled more money out even than the staff wanted to pull out. So we've listened, and I made a joke at the council. I said if I had my way, being an old retail guy, I'd put it at $59,999,999 to get it at the $60 million mark. But the council, we
They didn't appreciate your humor that much?
No, I got a chuckle out of it, but they didn't go along with that line of thought at all.
So it's going to be on May 16th is the measure.
And the ballots will go out here any day, I suppose.
Yeah, I haven't gotten mine yet.
No.
And but we did get the pamphlet.
Got the pamphlet
with the pros and the cons. But there's some other kind of things coming up as far as infrastructure for the city, and that's the library retrofit.
Yep.
And once the police move out, then you can retrofit City Hall.
City Hall. Yeah.
Because you can't retrofit it until they're out,
Yep.
and so we're talking at least 3 to 5 years down the road after a bond measure has been passed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
we take the library first. One of the issues with opponents of the original bond measure, the $82 million bond measure in November, was that they felt that both City Hall and the library should also be retrofitted as part of the bond. The city, after listening to the folks that pass these kinds of things and the experts, did not do that.
Regular
regularism is you put one thing on the measure and do not confuse people with 2 items, on one sort of one bond measure. I've worked in this political arena in Oregon for 35 years, managing state trade associations, and we're involved in a number of campaigns, both for and against. And that is basically a traditional. Do one topic. Don't confuse the voter with a couple different funding issues that don't bring them together. It doesn't help, and they generally fail. That's what the city council opted to do. Was just put that up ahead of time. So this time, the same concern was up and involved, and the city council addressed it by not putting them together again. We still weren't comfortable with that, but we did put another bond measure on for the library for November. It'd be about a $15.8 million bond measure, and that would retrofit it. It would also provide for a new roof that cost over $1 million, and do a number of other. It basically remodel and renovate and update for the next 30 or 40 years that library and make it extend its useful life into the future.
Now, there was some talk when the bond measure about the library came up about leaving the library open while it's being retrofitted. And some people thought that wasn't a good
Well,
idea.
and I, a big question mark came up in my mind. How does that work? From our era where quiet
Yeah.
was sort of the way you did things in the library, and so I don't think that decision's been made. I mean,
Okay.
it was up there. Let's do this. I know Mr. Shepke came in, and he was the state librarian, so he ought to know a little bit about libraries, and just said it just doesn't work very well. Please rethink that and look at it. And I think the city council heard that, and when we get a little nearer to that issue, we'll look at what's the best way to do that. On the flip side, boy, I look at that and go, moving a whole library
That's a lot
somewhere
of work.
else. That's a lot of books to move, and everything else that goes in with that, the wonderful library we have. So
And we do have a very good
yeah,
library.
we do.
And then it's going to come down to City Hall. And City Hall is in very bad shape, from what I can tell.
There's
a lot of leaks.
Well, you got leaks, in that
Atrium?
area with that roof. That thing it's slated to go. That'll be gone. If whatever they do when they get to it, that'll be gone. It's not real structurally safe, and it's been up there 45 years or so now. But they've got to retrofit that too, which is basically going in there and building, putting bigger walls up right through the middle of the building to make that thing structurally solid, among other things. And so that will be the next step. And I said we can't do it till the police leave. And so that even if the bond passes, it's going to be 2 to 3 years probably before the police, that the new facility's done, the police are out of there, and then we got to find the money, move forward to get that done. But it will be done. And in talking with the engineers, because at some point I think I look at things, try to look out of the box. I went, well, at some point, if we're going to spend all this money, would it be not better to consider building a new city hall if the dollar amounts get pretty close?
Yeah.
And they are getting pretty close. But the answer is this has got good bones. This is a sturdy structure. It needs help. It needs revitalization. But the bones of the building are sturdy, and it's good for another 40, 50, 60 years of use once we can get in there, upgrade everything that's up. And right now we're looked at. They call it a chiller. It's part of the air conditioning system. Is on its last legs, and it's got things are dying one after the other, and they're keeping it running with the old spit and wire. But come this fall, when the warm weather leaves us, if we ever get any warm weather.
I was just thinking about that.
If it keeps going like this, we could start in July. But we'll be coming in to replace this chiller, which is an expensive proposition. It's not inexpensive, but what happened was a lot of budgets were cut, and all the maintenance that was really needed was one of the things that was put to the side to keep the city operating and provide the services, and now we're going to have to deal with the consequences of 15, 20 years of that going on.
Yeah, it seems like maintenance is on a lot of different things
Sure.
have been let go.
City shops, if there's
Well,
a big need there.
Streets and sidewalks.
Streets, sidewalk. Well, we've had some bond measures, though, at least to help with that.
Yeah.
These 4 facilities have not had anything, and it's to the it's past council and city management. They've opted to live with what they've got and make it work to deliver the services to the citizens that they need and demand, and that costs money just like everything else. And they've opted to do that rather than fix the the buildings they work in. But we're getting to the point we have to.
Yeah, well, there's also, there was a change in city council direction as far as the third bridge is concerned during this last meeting. And
Well, I'm not sure it was a change, but yeah, there was.
No,
there was a political statement made, if nothing else. Yeah.
yeah. So, but that, I think it was you that said this is not the end of the story. I mean, because negotiations are still going to be going on with the city and the state in various.
Well, what we're still talking about there is no plan. There are no plans for this bridge. I mean, there's no plans in existence. There's no budget. There's no, there's nothing been done. What we've really been working on all this time, way before I came on to city council, which has only been, I'm in my 3rd year, is an environmental impact statement. And that's literally, it's literally piles and piles of reports and paper on everything you could think of that building such a bridge, how it would impact the greenway, how it would impact the river, how it would impact you know, the floodplains in West Salem, what it would do to the east side of the river with the ramps coming in, and all that stuff, all that, you know, how the average traffic is going to you know, impact the environment in Salem. All it is exactly what it is, an environmental impact statement. We're to the final. To me, the way I liken it, put in my simplistic way, is we're doing all the paperwork and lining it all up, and we've been doing it for, I think, 8 years, to get to a point where if it's approved, it's now sitting there, and if and when you figure out how to fund it, and if and when you start building the bridge, that part's done, and you're just down to actually building the bridge and dealing with that whole extra process down the road, figuring out how to fund it, whether it's a bond measure, whether it's a variety of things, federal money, state money, I don't, you know, it remains to be seen. But, you know, I've said on the floor several times to the council, you know, we've got to see what's going on here. I'm not voting for anything but the environmental impact statement, the ability to move forward, because I do think one of the things I've also said on the floor of the council is I moved here in '74 with my family, and I remember that I think the population, I recall driving in back when they'd have the population driving in the city was 67,000. Well, that's 165,000 or so. It's, you know, it's almost triple what it was then. And we're still using the same 2 bridges to get across that river. I lived in West Salem early on. There was not a lot of people in West Salem. It was a pretty easy commute. Well, now there's 40,000 plus people in West Salem, and most of the land in the urban growth boundary that's developable is in West Salem. It's not anywhere else in town. It's not in east. It's not really south. We're starting to bump up against the urban growth boundary in South Salem too. So, you know, you can still build inside with density, but anything else, most of the land's in West Salem. So that's going to grow. You know, you look at population estimates, and we're supposed to grow 100,000 in the next 20 years. Well, 100,000 people put in here, and we're going to still keep trying to go over that river on the same 2 bridges. I just see common sense says at some point we're going to need another way to get over that river. I don't know if that's the right answer or not, but I do know where they've picked after all their studies. You got to pick somewhere to cross that river. That's been picked. This environmental impact statement is done. It's been appealed, and we'll see what happens there to the Land Use Board of Appeals. But if that's done, at least it's sitting there for a future council, a future city, you know, management team to figure out what's the best process to get more people over the bridge once it becomes obvious that's needed.
Well, you know, I guess I look at traffic as something that isn't necessarily going to continue in the direction it's been going for the last 50. Yeah, because right now, you know, and I kind of considered it somewhat humorous when the employee tax levy for the transit system was turned down because they said not very many people were on the buses. But you look at one person in a car, and that's usually what you have going across the bridge. And I mean, that's extremely inefficient. And with global warming and, you know, at some point you run out of oil and cheap ways to get around. And I guess my concern is that you're building an infrastructure for something that might not be a real good idea in 30 years.
Well, then you don't build it.
Yeah.
But all we've got now, like again, what we're debating now and what the vote was really about now isn't the bridge. It's the environmental impact statement that if a bridge was built, this is how it would impact the environment. And it's approved or it isn't approved. So, I mean, you know, if it isn't approved, we have another whole issue moving forward. If it is approved, it's sitting there ready to go if a council and the community is willing to build it. If they're not, okay, then it does get built. Yeah. And will it be built? I don't know where the money's going to come from. So, you know, do I think it's going to be built in my time on the council? Probably not, you know.
Well, I mean, it's tolling is a big issue because we don't pay tolls in Oregon, which I'm kind of glad to see. But one of the things that came out while I was going to one of those kind of open houses for the third bridge, this back at least 3 years ago, I think now, was that there's a certain overhead for tolls. And so they're going to charge, you know, what they're talking about is like $1.50 per trip. And I can't remember if it's 60 cents or 90 cents in overhead costs. So you're not talking about, getting a whole lot of money.
Well,
on the
and you know,
tolls.
I can't answer. I can't speak to
Yeah.
that because I'm not aware of it. I do know moving forward. You got places back east where they've got the transponder or whatever you got on the car, and
Yeah.
it's automatic, and they're billing them and adding to their bill, and they're just driving through basically, like you see the major trucks going through the way stations
Right.
now.
But if you
Same
don't
kind
have a
of product.
transponder,
If you don't have it, but at some point that's probably what you're going to be. Director Fernandez, head of Public Works, I think Monday at that hearing, basically said this is not the guy's sitting there and
Yeah.
you're throwing a coin in the little deal, or he's giving you change out of his. That's not going to be what it is. But
Yeah.
do I think that tolling is going to be the way that goes? Probably not. I can't imagine people
Yeah.
are going to agree to that. I said so on the council floor, and I don't think I'd agree with that. That just makes no sense to me, especially if you got two bridges that you're the current two-bridge system that you're not tolling, and here's a toll one. And
People aren't gonna use it.
People are going to use the two that they don't have to pay for.
yeah. One of the things that's been on the council agenda recently is ride sharing, and you had some changes made to codes.
That was an interesting discussion. In the council's, the real problem the council dealt with was we had an existing infrastructure with the cab system, and it was heavily regulated. I mean, it was everything from the licensed to drivers to they had to have their cars checked once a year, at least. It was very heavily regulated. What they could charge, how often how quickly they had to get there, services they had to have. It had to be 24/7. A lot of things that it just added cost to that program. And Uber came in and clearly built a better mousetrap, and just by the success of it, I mean, that thing's like, 6-7 years old, and it's a $70 billion company in valuation. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. I think it was 2010 they started this. And so we looked at that, and on the one hand, they were basically saying, hey, we're the new age thing. All we're doing is getting a private contractor in touch with the customer. And I had a little problem with that because who's collecting the money? Well, you are.
Yeah.
Who's paying the employee? I mean, where do the drivers get their money from? Oh, from you. Who's providing their insurance? Well, you are. Who's giving them where they go to get their ride? Well, you are. So to me, they were their employer, and they were trying to say they weren't. And these are all private, independent contractors. That probably is still going to be decided somewhere along the lines, legally. But to me, for them to come in and say, no, we don't need any regulations, that wasn't going to happen, and that was why they weren't here earlier. We said, no, we're going to regulate you to some degree. Well, we don't want to be. Well, if you don't want to be, then you can't operate in the city. They tried it. We started fining them. They pulled out, and so second time through, the Mayor Bennett made that an issue that he wanted to see something done, and we talked about it, and basically. The cab guys wanted a level playing field, so what we in essence did was deregulate the cab companies and put them on a level playing field with Uber, and developed a new set of regulations with this new age economy that the cab companies can get down and basically operate much more effectively. They're not regulated anyway close to what we were doing before, and they're able to compete with them if they choose to. If they don't, well, they don't. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they've got a better mousetrap, and moving forward, probably sometime in June, we'll have Uber and Lyft operating in the city. Because we passed it, it's going to go through and go into effect. So.
Okay. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about Ward 4, your ward that you represent.
Well, Ward 4 is far south Salem. It's south of Kubler, between I-5 and Liberty. And it's probably the most compact. It's a large ward, but in terms of, it's just a big square rectangle, and it's not going all over the city. It's pretty much a South Salem, it's called the South Gateway neighborhood, basically, and that's where it is. Commercial comes sort of right through the middle of it, off the freeway, heading north. And there's a lot of new development going on still, even to this time. We're up almost against the urban growth boundary in the south part of the district. And so not a lot of shopping. We got some commercial, along or some commercial
On commercial.
business on commercial. It's appropriate, isn't it? You know, with a Walmart, Safeway, and you know, a variety of stores and strip malls up and down that from Kubler out to the Battle Creek area. But other than that, it's a single-family residential, pretty much a neighborhood.
And fairly new.
And fairly new, and frankly, one of the more wealthier districts or wards in the city.
And so what are some of the issues in that ward?
The big issue, interestingly enough, in that ward is in the Battle Creek Basin, as it flows out from the hills west of the ward, and it comes through the Creekside Golf Course and then through the Kuskoski old development into the old Battle Creek Golf Course area, is prone to flooding. And that then goes on, if you don't know, it goes down through Turner and connects to Mill Creek. And it's prone to flooding. If you get a pretty good heavy rainfall for a few days, it'll flood that Battle Creek area. A few years ago, I think in 2012, it flooded, and it came down and flooded some condos and threatened the new school, which is built up high enough that it was okay. But it's an ongoing problem, and there's concern in the ward, and I think I agree with it to a degree. Clearly, if there's new development and there's an urban growth boundary move, which there's probably going to be here in the future to deal with the population in the city, it's going to be in those hills where the Battle Creek and the other creeks, there's 3 or 4 creeks, are draining out of into this valley. And the concern now is we've already got flooding issues. So the concern is, what are we going to do to control that and make sure that, you know, we're not going from natural land that's absorbing a lot of this rainfall to building homes with impermeable surfaces that are increasing the amount of water going downstream into these flood-prone areas already. So it's an issue that we've talked about. The city's done some studies. They've modeled what happens based on the rainflow or the rainfall as it comes through there. But it's still something that we need to discuss. And anything we do here impacts Turner. And ultimately it impacts downtown Salem along as Mill Creek comes through State Street and heads to the Willamette River. We've got a lot of the neighborhoods in there tend to flood the basements and all that stuff at high water.
2012, I lived down there, and it did flood.
And it did. So it's not. So what's impacting us way over there in South Salem ends up impacting downtown at the same time.
Yeah. Well, one of the
and so it's an issue, struggling with it, what to do with it, and frankly, another problem as usual, it's expensive
and so
to fix.
Yeah. One of the things that I thought was interesting is that you're the council president, so you have a lot of extra work to do. And maybe we don't have a lot of time left,
Sure.
but maybe you could kind of give us a feel
Well,
for
you get elected by your other fellow councilors, and the council president works with the mayor pretty closely. I worked with Mayor Peterson in the first year I was council president, and Mayor Bennett came in, and I was reelected for a second year. And so if you ever phone in and look at one of our council meetings, you see I'm making most of the motions. That's one of the things the council president does. Every Sunday before a council meeting, I call the other council people, and we sort of go through the agendas, talk about if they've got any issues, any problems, and if they do, they can pull them. I then meet with the city manager, and we discuss those kinds of things. Fill in for the mayor in a lot of speaking engagements when he's double booked or can't make them all, those kinds of things. So.
Well, Steve, I want to thank you for coming in today and talking about city council matters.
Well, I thank you for doing this. The city needs to know what we're doing, and we need to tell them.
I really think so.
Yeah.
And so this has been City Beat, and join us next time.